Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and Mir Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Samach Zayin Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchas B'Tzias HaPas. We pick up today in Siman Kuf Samach Ches. We are continuing Sif Vav, which we began yesterday. So, for the sake of context, I'm going to read the Mechaber from the beginning of Sif Vav, which begins 2 lines from the bottom here on Samach Vav Amud Beis. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanesuna Batzaru Ba'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitzir Mitzar L'Rvacha Me'afel L'Oiro Mishibah L'Geula Hashta Ba'Gola Uzman Kariv V'Neimar Amen. Also, our learning should be a schus for Meir ben Chai Sarah, who needs Rachem Shemayim, and Ariel Yosef ben Miriam Razel should have a refuah shalema. So, yesterday we began to discuss Pas HaBaa Bekisnin. Pas HaBaa Bekisnin is one of those sugyas that really is on everybody's lips. A lot has been written about it. It's always discussed, and it's a very, very shver sugya. When we discuss Pas HaBaa Bekisnin, we're talking about foods that essentially share all of the characteristics of bread, and yet we do not treat them halachically as bread. We have bread, we wash, al netilas yadayim, and we make a hamoitzi, and of course the bracha achrayna is berachas hamazon. Yet, when it comes to Pas HaBaa Bekisnin, the default bracha on Pas HaBaa Bekisnin is not hamoitzi, it's parimina mezainos. We don't wash al netilas yadayim on a piece of cake, so there's no netilas yadayim, there's no hamoitzi, and the bracha achrayna is bracha achas me'en shalosh, the bracha of al hamichya. Now again, essentially, and certainly many types of Pas HaBaa Bekisnin share most of the characteristics of bread. They're incredibly similar to bread. I mentioned yesterday, if you go out on the web and you start looking for babka recipes, many of them will refer to the dough as a bread dough. Essentially, it's a yeast dough, and you're just taking this bread dough and you're filling it with chocolate, you're filling it with cinnamon, you're filling it with different types of fillings and flavorings, but essentially, it is a bread dough, and yet it is not treated as bread, it is now cake, it's Pas HaBaa Bekisnin. Again, the default is bracha rishayna mizaynos and bracha achrayna, bracha achas me'en shalosh. So, what we learned yesterday is that the key difference, the key nafkamina between Pas HaBaa Bekisnin and regular lechem that results in this distinction is that regular bread, lechem, that is something that you are kaveh suda on. You're kaveh suda on bread, and you eat your suda, you eat bread together with other staples. You eat bread with fish, you eat bread with meat. So you're kaveh suda on lechem, and you eat that suda, b'derech kvius, you eat a nice amount of food, you eat a suda. Masha'enkein, when it comes to Pas HaBaa Bekisnin, the nature of Pas HaBaa Bekisnin is that, generally speaking, you only eat a small amount. Some of us would like to eat a smaller amount of Pas HaBaa Bekisnin than we do, but traditionally, typically, you only eat a small amount of Pas HaBaa Bekisnin. You don't eat it derech kvius. You don't sit down with a kvius to eat your kokosh. You eat it more derech harai. You're having a coffee in Danish with your coffee. It's more derech harai. You eat a cracker with you eat a kichel with some herring on it. You're not sitting down and eating lunch. You're having a little herring with a little kichel. So, b'derech klal, Pas HaBaa Bekisnin is something which is designed to be eaten without a kvius and to be eaten in smaller amounts. And because of that, it doesn't get al netilas yadayim, it does not get hamoitzi, and it doesn't get berachas hamazon. The great question becomes, what happens when you start to treat Pas HaBaa Bekisnin as regular pas? Remember, we said, essentially, it is pas. That's why it's called Pas HaBaa Bekisnin. It doesn't get a whole new name. The regular lechem is pas. This is also pas. This is Pas HaBaa Bekisnin. But essentially, it is pas. The only reason it's not treated halachically as pas is because we don't use it the way we use pas. But what happens if we take pas בכיסנין and we start to use it the way we use pas? In that case, suddenly it's going to become elevated to pas. It's going to require al netilas yadayim. It's going to require hamoitzi, and it's going to require berchas hamazon. So we began to discuss this yesterday, and yesterday we saw in the Mishnah Berurah basically 3 different scenarios where you could take pas בכיסנין, elevate it to regular pas, and require al netilas yadayim hamoitzi and berchas hamazon. The first case that the Mishnah Berurah gave us was if you sit down to eat pas בכיסנין as a snack, but you eat a large quantity. So let's say you came home and you're very hungry and you don't have time to prepare lunch, and there's a nice, beautiful, fresh cake that's sitting on the countertop. So, okay, you know what? I don't have time to eat lunch. I'm starved. And you start cutting away at the cake. And you cut one piece, and you cut another piece, and you cut another piece, and you cut another piece. And before you know it, you have eaten a serious amount of pas בכיסנין. At what point do we look at it and say, yes, you ate it derech harai. Yes, your intent was only a snack. And maybe you ate it while you were walking around the kitchen, and you ate it while you were on the phone. Everything is derech harai. You ate it derech harai. You had in mind derech harai. Everything was derech harai. The only problem is you ate a ton of cake. If you ate a serious amount of cake, just by virtue of the amount that you ate, it becomes kviyasuda. Because remember, you're dealing with a form of bread. And you didn't eat a small amount, you ate a large amount. So by virtue of the sheer amount of cake that you ate, it became kviyasuda. How much cake do you have to eat? How much crackers do you have to eat? How many breadsticks do you have to eat? How many danishes do you have to eat? So that suddenly these foods become elevated from pas בכיסנין, which is a mezainis, and which is only derech harai, which is only a small amount, and which is only a snack, and it gets a mezainis and an alamichya. How much of it do you have to eat that suddenly it becomes kviyasuda al netilas yadayim hamoitzi lechem and aretz berchas hamazon? So the answer the Mishnah Berurah gave us on that scenario is, well, what you're doing is you're making a meal out of pas בכיסנין alone. All right. Let's say you wanted to make a meal out of regular pas alone. How much regular pas would you eat if you wanted to make a meal out of regular pas? I suggested yesterday, if somebody sat down with a loaf of fresh rye bread and that's all he was going to eat, he was going to be kaveh suda on bread alone, I imagine he would have to eat 5-6 slices at least in order to be kaveh suda on it. Well, take the volume. It's volume, my friends. You can't figure this out by putting it on a scale. It's not a question of weight. It's a question of volume. And we're going to have to get involved in a discussion of the air bubbles, etc., etc. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the volume, and some of that air does count towards the volume, for sure. So you're going to take the volume of, let's say, 6 slices of bread, and if you eat the volume of 6 slices of bread in pas בכיסנין, then you were kaveh suda on pas בכיסנין. Again, the logic of it is, you take a look, how much pas would somebody be kaveh suda on if he was being kaveh suda on pas alone? If you sit down and you eat the equivalent amount in pas בכיסנין alone, then you were just kaveh suda on pas בכיסנין. And then that means you need it on netilas yadayim hamoitzi, and your bracha achrona is going to be berchas hamazon. That's if you're eating it as a snack and you're eating it alone. The second scenario we had, and this is a much more common scenario, I think, is what do you do if you're eating pas בכיסנין together with other foods? So you sat down with a tube of snackers, or you sat down with a container of kichel, and you have tuna fish, you have tuna salad, and you're eating crackers with tuna, or you're eating crackers with cheese, or you're eating crackers with salami. So now you're sitting down, and really you're eating a meal. Now you're eating a meal already. Now you have a meal food. You've got your protein over there. You got your tuna salad. And you're eating it together with crackers. How many crackers do you have to eat under that scenario in order for it to be considered Kviya Suda? The answer is that in this scenario, you need less crackers. In this scenario, the way you measure it is, you look at the meal that you're eating. You're eating a meal of tuna with pasa babakistan. Well, now let's look at the guy next to you who's eating a meal of tuna with regular pas, not pasa babakistan. How much bread would he use for his tuna fish meal? Well, it's very simple to figure that one out. Somebody makes a tuna sandwich. A tuna sandwich is 2 slices of white bread, of rye bread, or two slices of sandwich bread, or 2 slices of whole wheat bread, or maybe a pita, right? That could also be. Now, in that case, so we look, that's the person who's eating the tuna with regular pas. You are replacing the regular pas with pasa babakistan. Okay, if you eat the volume of crackers that are equivalent to the volume of the pita or the volume of the 2 slices of bread, you eat crackers with your tuna in the equivalent amount to that bread. Okay, so then you were Kviya Suda on crackers, you were Kviya Suda on kichol, and again, you need al tis yadayim, hamaitzi, and berachas hamazon. Now, to me, to try to put this in terms that we can understand, to my mind, if you want to have the equivalent volume of 2 slices of rye bread in crackers, it can't be. I don't believe it's less than 16, 18 crackers. But how many crackers are there in a whole tube? A tube of snackers might very well be Kviya Suda. And you need al tis yadayim hamaitzi and berachas hamazon. Then the last scenario that the Mishnah Berurah gave us was a little bit between the two. The last scenario was, again, the first scenario was somebody sat down to eat pasa babakistan as a snack, and he ate it alone. The second scenario was somebody sat down to eat pasa babakistan with other foods, with tuna fish, with salami, with cheese, so he's making a meal out of it. The third scenario was somebody sat down to eat pasa babakistan as a meal. He sat down l'chatchila to eat it as a meal. He's hungry, it's lunchtime, he doesn't have anything else. All right, I'm making a meal. The same way somebody could make a meal out of bread alone, somebody could make a meal out of pasa babakistan alone. But now, this is worse. When I say worse, I mean it's more chamor than the first case. In the first case, the guy sat down to eat pasa babakistan alone as a snack. In that case, we said, when does he have to wash, make hamaitzi and berachas hamazon? If he eats enough pasa babakistan equivalent to the fellow who is Kviya Suda al hapas alone. So he said 5, 6, 7 slices of rye bread. In this case, the person is sitting down to make a meal out of pasa babakistan alone. In that case, the Mishnah Berurah said from the Magen Avram that now he needs less pasa babakistan to require hamaitzi and berachas hamazon. How much does he need? The same amount as the second case. The amount that somebody would use bread together with another food. So somebody would be Kviya Suda on tuna fish and bread. He would use 2 slices of bread. If somebody sits down to make a meal out of pasa babakistan alone, he needs the equivalent volume of 2 slices of bread. Why? Because he's making a meal out of it. And there is a scenario where people make a meal out of 2 slices of bread. Where's that? When they eat it together with something else. Now, it's true, you're not eating it with something else. But at the same time, you did sit down to make a meal. So since your das is to make Kviya Suda, your das is to make a meal, and you ate an amount of pasa babakistan that's the equivalent of an amount of bread that sometimes people are Kviya Suda on, now you need hamaitzi and you need berachas hamazon. So this was a recap. I know it took a lot of time, but it's a recap of what we saw yesterday, which is completely essential. We have to fix this in our minds. Now, we pick up on the very bottom line of Samach Vav Amid Beis, the very bottom line of the Mishnah Berurah. Now, because the Mishnah Berurah is discussing the question of Kviya Suda and amounts of lechem and amounts of Pasaba Bekistin that equal Kviyas Suda, he delves a little bit into this question of what volume of Pasaba Bekistin automatically becomes Kviyas Suda. What's difficult about this Mishnah Berurah is that in many ways, this Mishnah Berurah, in a way, it gives us more unanswered questions than answered questions. So let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah is going to present us with two different places in halacha where halacha gives us a volume that equals a suda. The first place is going to be a Iruvei Tchumen. The second place is really based on the mon. Now, Iruvei Tchumen, in order for somebody to make a Iruvei Tchumen, what is an Erev Tchumen? Iruvei Tchumen are, we know that when a person comes into Shabbos, he's koine shvisa. His place of inhabitants is where he starts Shabbos. So you begin Shabbos in Borough Park, you are koine shvisa in Brooklyn, New York. That's where you are koine shvisa. Now there's a tchum. You're not allowed to go more than 2,000 amas beyond the city limits. So you can't go within Borough Park, Brooklyn. You could go as far as you want. But once you hit the city limits, as determined by halacha, you can only go 2,000 amas beyond that on Shabbos. Now, what if you know going into Shabbos that you need to go more than 2,000 amas outside the city? You know that you're going to have a need, you have a Shalom Zachar, you have a Bris Shabbos morning, you want to be able to go 4,000 amas beyond the city limits. Well, then what you could do is you could use this mechanism known as an Iruvei Tchumen. What you do is you package up Mozain shtei sudas. You make food enough for 2 seudas. You package it up. You put it a drop less than 2,000 amas outside the city limits in a makom mishumer, in a protected place. And now, halachically, you are being koine shvisa over there. Instead of being koine shvisa by your house when Shabbos comes in, you're koine shvisa at your Erev when Shabbos comes in. Okay? You're fine where you are on Shabbos, even though you go back home on Shabbos, you're okay, because the city is within 2,000 amas of your Erev where you were kind of shvisa. And you're in the city. When you're in the city, you can go as far as you want. So you're fine where you are. But now what you gained is, now you could go on Shabbos, you could go 2,000 amas to your Erev, and now you could go another 2,000 amas beyond your Erev. That's what Iruvei Tchumen do for you. But one thing we could learn from Iruvei Tchumen, and that is, when you create the Erev, you need Mozain shtei sudas. And the Chazal give us shiurim for how large the Erev Tchumen has to be. So l'chayra, one place that we could look at in halacha to determine what creates a suda, and therefore what creates kviyas suda, is the size, the volume of food that you need for your Erev. So says the Mishnah Berurah here on the bottom line, it's in the middle of Eis Katan Chav Daled, says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hinei le'inyan Iruvei Tchumen b'simin shin samachet siv gimel. When it comes to Iruvei Tchumen shin samachet siv gimel, Esau, we learned over there, the shir su'udahu shalosh ay arba beitzim. What is the volume of suda? The volume of 3 or 4 eggs. Now, for the purpose of these measurements, we usually assume that the volume of an egg is approximately 2.5 fluid ounces. So, okay, what's a suda? 3 or 4 beitzim. And it seems from the poskim that they concentrate on the 4 number, not the 3 number. So that would mean that a kviyas suda is daled beitzim. The kasukam achronim, and many achronim write, duhadin kan, that the same size, the same volume, will apply over here when discussing the halachas of Pasaba Bekistin. Chashuv bazeh shir kviyas suda. You want to know what automatic kviyas suda on Pasaba Bekistin is? If you eat daled beitzim. If you eat the equivalent volume of 4 eggs in Pasaba Bekistin, you will kviyas suda. That's an automatic kviyas suda because Chazal call that kviyas suda. They say daled beitzim is a suda. Aval, however, says the Mishnah Berurah, kam achroinim, many achroinim, v'hagra miklalam, and amongst them we have the gra cholkim. They disagree with this. And they hold that you don't make a hamaitzi and benching on pasaba bekisnin elo kishir suuda kavua shu shel erev avoker. In order to hit the automatic size of pasaba bekisnin and to say that you were kaveh suda on pasaba bekisnin, you need a suda that is the equivalent of sudas erev vavoker. What does that mean, sudas erev vavoker? Well, we know that when we were in the Midbar, the Rabbeinu Shalom gave us man. And when the Rabbeinu Shalom gave us man, he gave us man for 2 su'udas. And it was a su'udah for the morning and a su'udah for the night. That's what we had for the man. From the man, we had an omer lagol goylus. So, a half an omer, each person got an omer worth of man. So that means a half an omer is a meal. A half an omer is approximately 22 beitzim. So there's a vast difference over here between the sheet of the Achronim, who want to go with the shear of Dalet Beitzim based on a Ruvei Tchumen, and the shear of 22, 23, 24 Beitzim based on this shear of the Achronim and the Gra that want to go by Sudas Erev Avoker. It's a huge difference. Between 22 and 28 Beitzim, that's a large Suda. Now, we have to remember that when we talk about a Suda of 22, 23, 24 Beitzim for Kriya Suda on Pasaba Bekisnin, it doesn't mean necessarily that you ate 24 Beitzim of Pasaba Bekisnin. You ate Pasaba Bekisnin together with other foods to equal the 24 Beitzim. But you need a Suda. You want to say that a guy who was kivei suda on pasaba bekistin, you need a suda. You need a suda of 24 beitzim. That's what would come out from these achronim. Ukamaycha kasam bebeis yaiser b'shem shibali leket. V'chein matzasi be'eshkel. The muchach shu sever kain, like the gra and these other achronim. V'chein noite yasad yaiser lashayin ha'shulchan aruch. And says the Chavetz Chaim, it sounds to me like the mechaber is leaning towards that greater amount. Why? What do you see in the Mechaber that says that the Mechaber is leaning towards that greater amount? I believe what he means is the Mechaber doesn't say a word about Dal Beitzim. If the Mechaber wanted to say that Kvi Yesud is Dal Beitzim, the Mechaber could have said very simple. Pasa Baba Kistin, if you Kvi Yesud on it, you got to make Hamaitzi and you got to make Berchas Hamazon. What's called Kvi Yesud? Dal Beitzim. That's not what he says. What he says is Shir Sha'acherim Regilim Mikbayalov. An amount of food that people typically are kaveh sud on. Well, an amount of food that people are typically kaveh sud on, we know from Chazal, from the Mun, that a typical suda is more like 24 beitzim, not 4 beitzim. So the Chavetz Chaim suggests that the Shulchan Aruch seems to be leaning towards that larger shear. Will become Makayim, nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim lechatchila, toiv lachush l'dasa machmirim. It would be better to be concerned with the opinion of the Machmirim, Shaloi lechal arba beitzim, that you should not eat the volume of 4 beitzim of Pasaba Bekisnin, because then you're going to get into a shaila. Once you eat the shear of 4 beitzim, so you might have already hit, according to Kama Achronim, you might have hit already the shear that creates an automatic Kvi Yesud of Dalet beitzim, based on a Ruvei Tchumen. And now maybe you should make hamaitzi, maybe you should make berkas hamazon. But you didn't eat the 23 beitzim or 24 beitzim. So says the Mishnah Berurah, it would be best refrain from eating dalet beitzim worth of pasaba bekisnin so as not to get into a shaila. Certainly, if you're dealing with a food item that you're not even sure is pasaba bekisnin, it might be regular pas. So now you're compounding the shaila. You're already eating something that might be pas, and now you're eating an amount that you might have been kaveh suda. So you're being compounding shilas after shilas. Certainly you should do that after mavur b'sif zayin dehachid mazel hakil. Even though in sif zayin we're going to see that we could be makel. If we have a suffix, whether something is called pas or pas ababikistin, we could be makel. Al kol panim b'vadi yesh lachush l'das hamachmirim. So again, this latter half of Ois Katan Chav Daled doesn't seem to help us a lot when it comes to practical how we should be noyig. in a way, he's leaving us with more questions than answers. Now we have maybe Daled Beitzim creates an automatic Kviyas Suda. Maybe you don't have an automatic Kviyas Suda until you hit over 20 Beitzim. But we could stick with the first half of the Mishnah Berurah, which gave us clearer guidelines. And those are the three scenarios that he discussed at length in the beginning of the shir. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan, it happens to be, the Aruch HaShulchan writes a lot about this shir of Daled Beitzim, and he's like, he says it's a tamua, it's a wonder to him, this shir of Daled Beitzim. He doesn't see how you can have Kviyas Suda on Daled Beitzim. The halacha by Yeruvei Trumin. The halacha by Yeruvei Trumin is a very big kula. It's maybe even a din d'Rabbanan, it's maybe not even a din d'Oraisa, and it's a very big kula. It's part of the kula of Yeruvei Trumin to call a Suda, Daled Beitzim. But he says, come on, nobody's Kviyas Suda on Daled Beitzim. That's not called Kviyas Suda. At the same time, the Aruch HaShulchan screams and yells very, very loudly. When you open up the Aruch HaShulchan, it jumps at you off the page. That's how loud it is. The Aruch HaShulchan complains very loudly about people who go to a Kiddush. He says they go to a Kiddush. I'll read to you what he says here. V'da, you should know. Shekam gedolim tzaku kekruchya. Many gedolim, they scream like roosters. Al-Bashet is pashet b'dayreinu b'chol ha-medina, on the meaning that it has become widespread in all of our regions. Shebe'ez a simcha, that whenever there's some kind of a simcha, archim shulchan, they set a table, imkam mine dogim, with all types of fish. Herring, anyone? V'kam mine basar, and meat boards, smoked meat and jerky and everything else. Va'oichlim impossible bekisnin. And what do they eat it with? They eat it with kichel, they eat it with crackers. So they're eating the herring, they're eating from the meat board, and they're eating everything together with pasabah bekisnin. Va'oichlim belinatil yadayim, and they eat without washing. Ubaloi hamaitzi, and they don't make hamaitzi. Ubirkas hamazon, and they don't bench. Ela bebirkas mezainos, they just make a mezainos. Ulubasai falamichya. Va'oichlim aharbe ma'oid me'agluskois, and they eat a lot from the cake. Umechala ha'ofoy al shemen, some kind of challah that's baked in oil. Shekorin vimel challah. I don't know what that is, but some kind of a challah that they're calling pasabah bekistin. Ve'ein shum safek bazeh. And the Aruch HaShulchan says, if you look at the amount that they're eating, there's no suffix that they were automatically Kviyas Suda. You think about it, right? You go to the Kiddush, and you take kichel, and you have some herring with cream, and then you take another kichel, and you have a little matches, and then you have another kichel, and you have a little jalapeno matches. Then you take a drink, and you eat a piece of cake. Oh, first of all, you ate a piece of kokosh already after Kiddush. So the way this started was, you heard Kiddush, and you ate a nice big piece of kokosh. Then you took a kichel, and you had some cream herring. Then you took another kichel, and you had some jalapeno matches. Then you had another kichel, and you had another type of herring. Then you took a drink, and you ate another piece of cake, because now you want to have fleishiks. So you have to eat, and you need and a drink. You need kinuach in order to go ahead and eat fleishiks. And then you take some crackers, and you have chopped liver, and you take some kichel, and you have some stuff off the meat board. So now, how much pasabah bekistin did you eat? And you ate it together with other foods. You ate it together with herring, and you ate it together with liver, and you ate it together with meat off the meat board. Okay, so now ask yourself, how much bread would somebody eat? If somebody sat down to this Suda, if somebody sat down to eat a Suda with herring and with meat off the meat board, how much challah would he eat? 2 slices of challah? It's very, very easy to imagine that you already ate 2 slices of challah worth of kichel and cake. If you already ate two slices of challah worth of kichel and cake, then, my friends, it's very possible that you will Kviyas Suda. And the Aruch HaShulchan ends off this paragraph by saying, "V'chol yirei elikim yirchak es atzmai mizeh, v'hu rachum yechaper ovoin." The Aruch HaShulchan is very, very, very distressed by this. He says clearly there's a problem over here. Now, he goes ahead to be Melamed Schus, and he wants to be Melamed Schus based on a riff. There is a riff that says, there's a riff that throws out the idea that Kviyas Suda does not necessarily have to be solely dependent on how much you eat. Maybe Kviyas Suda is more dependent on the format of the eating. By Kiddush, you're walking around. It's completely derech harai. And if it's completely derech harai, maybe even if you eat a serious amount, that's not called Kviyas Suda. But the Aruch HaShulchan only says that to be Malamed Schus, because we don't paskin like that riff. So, fine, we found a riff to hang the hats of the people who are really doing something wrong. But, okay, it's a problem. So this is something that we definitely have to be careful about. I saw in contemporary sources, I saw in Rabbi Forst's beautiful work, the Pischei Halacha, the Laws of Brachas, here, you can see it, in this wonderful sefer of Rabbi Forst's, the Law of Brachas, he goes on and on about this. And he says, he quotes the where is it? Here. One who eats cake or crackers together with other staple foods must recite Hamoitzi if the amount of crackers is the equivalent of the amount of bread one would eat with a meal having those same dishes. The fact that his intention was to snack, not to eat a meal, is immaterial, right? This is the middle scenario that we saw in the Mishnah Berurah at the beginning of Ois Katan Chav Daled. Right? You sat down to eat the pasa בכיסנין together with other foods. You had crackers and tuna fish. Often people attending a buffet eat crackers and egg salad, chopped liver, or herring, which in quantity constitute an obvious Kviyas Suda, without being aware that they are required to wash it till Yadayim, recite Hamoitzi, and Birkas Hamazon. Quite often, the combination of these foods equals the amount of side dishes one eats with bread and challah, and therefore constitutes a Kviyas Suda. This practice of eating without Netilas Yadayim and Hamoitzi has been censured by the poskim of the previous generation, and of course he brings down the Aruch HaShulchan. See Aruch HaShulchan, who soundly condemns this practice. Although the Aruch HaShulchan finds an excuse for the practice, that's the riff, his closing words are, "May the merciful forgive the sin." And that clearly indicates the Aruch HaShulchan's true feelings on the matter. Okay. Ois Katan Chaf Hey. So, on the top line of the Mechaber on Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, the Mechaber told us that if you are Kavei Asuda on the Pasa Bekisnin, Mevarach Alav Hamoitzi Uberkas Hamazon. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chaf Hey, Hamoitzi Uberkas Hamazon, V'gam Netilas Yadayim. You also have to wash, and you have to make a bracha of al netilas yadayim. U'kamay b'pas gomor, just like if you were dealing with bona fide bread. V'chamavur le'el b'sim kofton chesef alafay and sham. Ois Katan chavav. And after you ate this, no, I think for this we have to read weiter in the Mechaber. Okay, now let's go to the top line in the Mechaber, Samach Zayin Amud Aleph. The fourth word into the line, V'im mitchila. Now we're going to get into an interesting shaila, and that is the following shaila. What happens if you went to the Kiddush, and before you walked over to the Kiddush, you mamish made a hineni mamucha numazumin. You came over to the Kiddush and you said, hineni mamucha numazumin, I am going to keep to my diet. So you went over to the Kiddush, and you spied a little piece of sponge cake, and you said to yourself, well, I have to eat like a kazayas because I want to be Yotze Kiddush B'Makom Suda. So I'm going to find the least calorie dense piece of cake over here, the cake with the lowest glycemic index, and I'm going to eat a piece of cake just to be Yotze Kiddush B'Makom Suda. So you ate a piece of cake. Then you spied the jalapeno matches herring, and you said, okay, just one little piece. Besides, the herring, that's protein. The oil in the herring, okay, it's a little bit of fat, we need a little bit of fat. And I'll have one kichel, one little piece of kichel for one little bit of jalapeno matches. So you took a little kichel, and you had jalapeno matches. You're still good. At this point, you're still okay, because you did not eat pasa bekisnין in a volume to get yourself in trouble. So you made a mezainis on the piece of cake, and with that mezainis you potted your kichel. So right now you're still good. Now you ate a kazayas because you wanted to be Yaitse Kiddush Bak Masuda. So right now you're going to make an alamichya. The way things are right now, your mezainis was a perfectly justifiable mezainis, and your plan to make an alamichya is a perfectly justifiable halamichya. But now is where things go off the rails. Now suddenly you spy the platter that has on it the beautiful babka, and now you see that they brought out the meat board, and you see mamish ala matamim over there, and now you forget the diet, and now you start snacking down. Now you're into the kichel, and you're into the crackers, and you're into the babka, and now you realize, I was kivei suda. What do you do now? Now, you already made a bracha rishayna. You made a mezainis. You didn't wash al natil yadayim. But now it turns out that you were kivei suda on pasabah bekistin. So how does this work? You bench now? Do you have to make a new bracha rishayna? Do you have to go outside and wash the tilas yadayim? How does this work? So let's take a look at what the Mechaber says over here. If at the outset of the Kiddush, like I said, your mindset was you're sticking to your diet and you're only eating a little bit of pasabah bekistin, uberach bari mezainis, and in harmony with your mindset, you made the proper bracha rishayna of bari mezainis. Va'achakach, but then after that, achal shir she'acherim koivim alav. But then you went and you ate enough that it equals a kviyas suda. What do you do now? Says the Mechaber, Yavarach alav brikas hamazon. Okay, listen, the bracha rishayna, too late. You made the bracha rishayna. Al tils yadayim, you didn't wash, fafalin. But now you will kviyas suda, you need to bench. So don't make a bracha achas bein shalosh, don't make an alamichya, you have to bench. Continues the Mechaber, afal pi shaloi berach hamaitzi tchila, even though you didn't make hamaitzi at the outset. So what? The brikas hamazon is not dependent on the hamaitzi. If you were kavei sud on pasabah bekistin, you need to bench. V'achalta v'savato v'erachta. So you need to bench. The bracha rishayna, the lack of the tilas yadayim fafalin. There's no way we can fix that. Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cut l'chavav. Yavarach alav brikas hamazon. Kevin shehishlim l'shir kviyas suda. Since you ended up eating an amount that filled out the volume of kviyas suda, so now you have to bench. Aval hamaitzi ain't tzarich lavarech amar shenimlach lechel. But you're not going to make a hamaitzi now on what you changed your mind to eat. But this is very important. You got to fully understand what the Mishnah Berurah says. Kevon de'ein b'masha munach lefanav akar shenimlach shir kviyas suda. Because at the point during which you woke up and you realized that you're eating an amount that equals kviyas suda, it equals an amount of kviyas suda when you combine what you are still going to eat with what you already ate. So in other words, what happened over here is you ate a piece of cake after Kiddush. You ate 2 kichel with herring. Now you decide, I'm going to eat another few kichel or another piece of cake. And you realize that when I finish eating what I'm planning on eating now, and I combine it with what I already ate, I am going to have kviyas suda. In that case, you can't go wash the tilas yadayim now, nor can you make a hamaitzi now. You know why? Because the amount of food that you're planning to eat in the future is not a sheer kviyas suda. In order to wash and in order to make a moitzi on pasabah bekistin, you have to be eating a shear of kviyas suda mikan ulahaba. You can't wash the tilas yadayim and make a hamoitzi on pasabah bekistin that you ate l'sha'avar, that you ate in the past. So I'll make it very simple for you. Let's say you intended on eating a small amount of pasabah bekistin, and then you ate a lot of pasabah bekistin. Now you sit down with a bencher and you want to make a bracha achroina. And you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make an alamichya. Then you say, hold it. How can I make an alamichya? I just ate a ton of cake and kichel and everything else. I can't make al michi. I have to bench. Now, certainly, you can't go wash the tils yadayim now and make a hamaitzi now. You ate it already. It's in the past. Even if you're going to eat one more cookie now, you can't wash and make a hamaitzi on one cookie, and you can't wash and make a hamaitzi on the cookies and the bread, the cookies and the kichel and the crackers that you ate 10 minutes ago. You ate it already, so you can't make the bracha on that now. So the only way, I'll give you a heads up on what the Mishnah is going to say further. The only way you're going to wash and make a hamaitzi in the middle of the kiddush after you already started eating is if you realize now that I am going to eat mikanu lahaba, I'm going to eat between now and the end of the kiddush a full amount of kviyas suda besides what I ate before. If I realize that they just brought out a beautiful herring platter. They brought out a beautiful herring platter with cured salmon and cured tuna, and I just love that stuff. So I'm going to sit down now with a plate full of kichel and crackers and this and that, and I'm going to go to town on the herring platter. And I look at it and I say, well, if I was being kaveh suda on herring with bread, I would eat 2 slices of rye bread. I have a plate of kichel over here. This kichel is equal to 2 slices of rye bread. So I made a mezainis on a piece of babka 5 minutes ago. But I realized that right now I am about to be kaveh suda on an amount of pasabah bekisnin that equals kviyas suda. So now, besides, even though I already made a mezainis, now I have to get up, I have to wash the tils yadayim, make a hamaitzi, eat what I'm going to eat, and then bench. But let's say that's not the case. Let's say I already had a piece of babka, I already had some kichel, and now I realize I'm going to eat another 4 kichel. And those 4 kichel, together with the babka and the kichel that I ate already, will constitute a kviyas suda. In that case, I can eat the other 4 kichel, and then I need to bench. But I can't wash the tils yadayim and make hamaitzi, because I can't wash the tils yadayim and make hamaitzi on 4 kichel. The stuff that I ate before, I can't wash the tils yadayim and make hamaitzi on stuff that I ate in the past. That's the point that the Mishnah Berurah is making now. So that's why the Mishnah Berurah says over here, the Mechaber says, if mitchila you are planning on eating a small amount, and then it turns out that you ate enough that equals a kviyas suda, said the Mechaber, you need to bench. Even though you didn't make a hamaitzi, you need to bench. And on that, says the Mishnah Berurah, you have to bench kevan shehishlim l'shir kviyas suda, since you hit the bar of kviyas suda. But you can't make a hamaitzi now, kevan de'ein b'mashem munach lefanav achar shenimlach shir kviyas suda, because what you're going to eat in the future is not a shir kviyas suda, ela b'yachad imashach kfar. It's only a shir of kviyas suda when it's combined with what you ate in the past. Ve'im be'emes yesh shir kviyas suda b'mashal lo yachal adayin. If there is a share of kviyas suda with what you did not yet eat, if you're gonna eat going forward a share of kviyas suda, tzarich lito yadav levarach hamaitzi v'al tils yadayim b'berkas hamazon, then indeed, you do have to stop what you're doing, you do have to wash the tils yadayim, you do have to make a hamaitzi, and then you do have to bench. Let's go back to the Mechaber and finish off Siv Zayin. 3 lines down near the beginning of the line. V'im achal shir she'acherem ein koifim alav. But if you only ate an amount of pasabah bekisnid that doesn't equal a kviyas suda, af al pi shehu kaveh alav, even though you are being kaveh suda. Eina mevarach al abarim min mezaynais ubracha achas mein shalosh the botla daite etzkaladam. If you sit down, somehow you're being, let's use the examples that we gave. You're eating crackers and tuna fish, and we said people are kaveh suda on bread and tuna fish, 2 slices of rye bread, and we said that the equivalent of 2 slices of rye bread and crackers, let's say, is about 16 crackers, right? You're not so hungry, and you decide I'm eating lunch, I have tuna salad, and I have 8 crackers, and I'm eating, and I'm diet conscious, I don't want to eat too many carbs, so I am going to be kaveh suda on 8 crackers and tuna fish. Okay, so do I have to wash because I was Kaveh Suda? No. You know why? Because you can't be Kaveh Suda on 8 crackers. It's possible Bekistin, and you can't be Kaveh Suda on possible Bekistin. It's such a small amount. But Ladaita, it's a Kaladam. It's true, you have a cranking cup that you want to keep your diet, and therefore 8 crackers is enough carbs. You can't be Kaveh Suda on 8 crackers. And therefore, you would not have to wash. Okay? It's a complicated topic, and therefore it takes time. But we're not here to just turn the pages. We're here to learn the topic and to understand the topic. So we're going to stop over here. Mr. Hashem, next time we'll continue with Siv Zayin. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discussing limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Varsham should send Yeshua's, Refuas, Parnasa, and Shidduchim to all those in need. And again, Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Anu Suda Martzaru Bashivya, Ha'im Nimbein Bayam, Ubein Bayabasha, Hamake Birachem Aleim, Ve'etziam Yitzar L'Rvacha, Me'afel L'Oiro, Mishibad L'Geula, Hashta Bagala of Izman Kariv, and Amen. Be well.